Hello and welcome. This is All In Fly Fisherman. Today we're going to be continuing our winter tailwater fly tying series with a couple of my favorite variations of the Myers mini leech. I am not going to tie all these variants as it's going to take too much time for this video, but I will show them to you. So the Myers mini leech, I prefer to tie it in this brown and black method. I will use brown pine squirrel and black ostrich herl. If you've seen leeches, you can see that they kind of vary in color, and it's really important, I think, to match that. I do like to find a really thick ostrich herl for making sure I can get a nice head for our fly. And for all the leeches I tie, I kind of do a little bit of variation on the bottom, and I will take Sharpie marker and color in the brown of that leather black. Here's kind of what it normally looks like. Kind of, I feel, gives a better, more natural look and is less off-putting than seeing that brown leather. So I tie this fly on a TMCO 2312 in size 16. I will take it down to an 18 on a size TMCO 200R. And they're essentially the same hook. I think they just change names when they get big, change size. I don't really know. They're essentially the same hook and profile. We will use brown pine squirrel, black ostrich herl, black crystal flash, black UTC in 140. I prefer this 140 because you can really kind of, as you can see, it's a tougher thread and it'll last a little longer for you. This fly will take a beating. We'll be using black UTC ribbing in small. And a variant I've been also playing with has been using the sparkle Midge braid in Peacock. Okay, so our first variant we have here on the vise is that black ostrich herl with the brown leech colored in brown and the black on the bottom. And then instead of using any flash, I actually just covered black wire to cover the most of this brass looking part of the hook and flashed it with some Solerez Bone Dry. I do that because I want this fly to last, and this version is typically fished in the slower tail ends of the pools if I'm sight fishing and I'm not trying to spook the fish. Sometimes that extra flash can really spook your fish, and this will work in your faster water flows as well, and in your kind of water when you're fishing kind of like a riffle or any faster water. That's where I typically fish the leech because you want more of those enticing bites. Another version we have here is the pine squirrel with just black crystal flash and the black bottom and the black ostrich herl on the front. Now I do fish this pattern, or I am fishing this pattern because I'm kind of trying to run out of them, because I'm going to tie my go-to flash pattern right now, which is essentially the same fly, just a little bulkier. So I'll use that if I want to avoid the bulk, but this version I will use if I want to just know I can fish this fly for an extended period of time, because this fly will take a beating and you will need to use your forceps sometimes to get it out if you're not crushing your barb, and you'll need to grab this shank and pull out. And typically if you just have your tinsel like so, that tinsel will tend to rip if you don't have bone dry on it, or if it's just you do have bone dry and it's has no protective layering on it. So here we're going to add this black UTC in small, and we're just adding this so we can have a little extra protection to our crystal flash and making a little more sturdy of a fly. Now I typically will fish this pattern in areas where you have faster water, which I mentioned earlier, or areas where you have like a flow change or kind of like a waterfall or water feature, because you're really looking for those enticing bites. If this fly is kind of seen when the fish has like more time to look at it, I think it's a little off-putting because it's pretty flashy. And that's when I'll switch to going with the no flash version of this fly. With the no flash version of this fly, I will also kind of mess around and I'll fish it as my second fly behind an egg pattern in the early winter and fall and spring when you're getting those eggs going, because then you kind of are getting those fish really seeing this leech and they're like, get this away from my eggs. And we'll tie this to the front. You can vary the amount of flash you add to this fly based on how visible you want it. I prefer it in this black color. I usually take it to a pretty far back on the hook, but sometimes I'll just take it up to like halfway if I want a little flash but nothing too crazy. Okay, next we'll cut that off with our scissors. Add our wraps of wire. Again, this is just to really secure this tinsel and protect it. It does add a little weight, which helps you get down. I will say I typically do not fish this with a bead or on a jig style hook as you see many people do. The reason I don't is because when on a jig hook, I have a jig hook fly right here, they tend to sit like this or like yay, and it doesn't really add a good profile of a leech because you want it to kind of ride like so. So if I do tie a jigged leech, I will tie it with a smaller bead so it kind of still gets down but is less kind of pulled. And we're gonna add our bone dry, Solerez Bone Dry, to lock this up. Make sure you get all the extra excess resin off your brush. And one good wrap layer back. We'll hit that with our light. We'll grab our pine squirrel here. You want to make sure you grab a nice thick pine squirrel. Nothing too thin because you don't want it to be too flat when it gets wet. And you want it to have a good fluffy body in the water. Something I also like to do, as you see I'm doing here, is I pull off a good millimeter of the pine squirrel fur so I can get a nice level tie-in point for our ostrich. I also do this because if you tend to tie your ostrich or your pine squirrel back, it kind of like puffs back and adds this little extra pressure, kind of minimizing the flow of your leech. But back to the jig. I will get a little funny with the jig, and I will fish it with a larger bead during egg season with a large orange bead, but that's only a fly I really fish for, I don't know, a couple casts just to see if I can get a good enticing egg bite. Take that forward. As you can see, when you add that wire, it kind of builds up the body profile a little bit. And we're going to want to wrap this so the ostrich herl, the top of the ostrich, kind of folds backwards, which I think helps build that natural look of the leech kind of mouth. And I do like to add quite a bit of ostrich on there. I like having it a little more present than in your typical Myers leech. Now that we got that locked in, we're just gonna do a couple of wraps, snip that off. whip finish. I only do a couple whips because I will typically use my bone dry here at the end just to kind of seal it all up. I'm going to use it as a head cement. It's really, I really like this resin. It kind of gives a little shiny head to it. Just kind of let it soak into that thread. Make sure you don't get it in the hook eye. Give that a blast. And I like to snip this back roughly 3/4 to an inch. 3/4 of an inch to an inch. Nothing too crazy long. If you've seen the leeches on the Platte or any tailwater, they can get long, but I like to keep them fairly short. And then the secret ingredient, a Sharpie marker. Just to kind of hide that leathery, light leathery look. There you go, so you see that. And there you have it, my typical flash brown leech. Now another variant I've been playing with, we're going to tie really quickly here, is with that Midge material. It's kind of a funky material to use and it adds a little extra bulk, but I really like it. So for this, we're going to get our hook in the vise. We're going to wrap in here. I stop roughly, I don't know, 1/6 of the way back. I'll then tie in our midge. Get that close to the end as possible. And I'll tie that back just with a few wraps. I don't like having too much of this flashy material on there, but I think having a little bit really adds to the body of the fly and kind of gives it this cool flashy look without being overly flashy. You can wrap it all the way back. I've definitely fished it like that, but it's typically not how I do it. That's why I've got that other flashy midge. And then I'm just going to continue wrapping this back. Kind of get this material out of the way, just to make sure the rest of this hook is nice and black. I do like to clip this material fairly short because I don't like having to do what I'm doing now and kind of hold it out of my wrapping of the thread. And then we'll kind of just skip that forward to just above. Then we're going to take this and give it a few good wraps around. I like to pull it nice and tight to try to keep it as flat as I can. And as you can see, this is a really flashy material, so you really don't need much. I think just this little bit is perfect. Wrap that forward. Cut it out. Make sure you cut out the excess here. Another thing I really like to use this midge material for is if I'm tying like a Frenchie and I don't want to use dubbing or Peacock. As you can see, as you add a little resin to this, it kind of changes the color to a darker blue. I really like how it looks. It looks in the water. As you can see, it's kind of just more of a head of this pattern. Minimal flash. And then we'll take our leech, pull off that front millimeter. Tie that in. Readjust that. Back. And just to kind of clear out the amount of material we have in front of us, we're going to snip this now to roughly an inch or 3/4 of an inch. There we go. And we're going to add our ostrich. Now this is one of those flies I definitely advise you kind of play around with and personalize for yourself. As you've seen here, there are many ways to fish it and kind of adapt it to what you think works best. This is just my personal method. And then we're going to wrap so that ostrich is backwards. Well, you can see what I just did is I actually grabbed the Herl and kind of purled it back a little bit, just so it's not getting caught in the front. And as you can see, I got a little close to the hook eye here. Still well enough room for the tippet to get through, but a little over than I personally like. But each fly doesn't have to be perfect. And then we'll just tie that in. Here, we'll finish that in. Let me see. As you can see, as we're adding these kind of thicker materials, the head of your fly does get a little bit bigger. And we'll snip that. And kind of like a on the river tip, if you kind of have a fly that's going over your hook eye like mine is, something I like to do is just grab a barbless fly, just slip that in, just kind of push it back a little bit. And since this is definitely going over our hook eye a little bit, we are going to add our UV flash, or our UV bone cure, just to seal that up a little bit. We want to get on top of the head to seep into it and not going over that eye. If it does go over the eye, again, just use a barbless hook to poke that material clear. And our final touch, black Sharpie. Make sure you get that really well coated. And there you have it. Our Myers mini leech with a little bit of that Peacock Midge material. And you can really see there's not much showing underneath that Herl and leech. So it's kind of perfect for just getting that good flash, getting nothing too crazy in there, not too suspicious, but still able to present a nice leech that is going to catch you some nice larger fish. This is my favorite one. I'm specifically going for brown trout, as they are a little more aggressive. And it's overall a great pattern. I hope you add this as a staple to your box. Again, thank you for joining me with this series. Make sure to like and subscribe. Have a good one.